walls came down when your love shone through. Now my life will never be the same. You love me too much.
Welcome to UCAN Studios. I am your host, Isaac Walsh, and I'm with Dr. Bob Winford. Say good morning.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Doing good. And this is his second show. So if this is your first time catching on this, you want to hit the first one, you can check that later. If this is your first time to UCAN, please go to UCANMichigan.com. If you know someone who's struggling with drug rehabilitation or alcohol rehabilitation, they put their information in, they can get some help within 24 hours. If you know someone's just struggling because life is hard, have them go to spiritualwarfareunit.com. You can click on struggling. We have over 20 different nonprofits that we're working with. Click on there. If you know someone who's struggling with food or clothes or baby formula or insurance or all kinds of stuff, direct links to people who are struggling in the community. All right, Bob, so since last time, and it's only been a few months since we spoke, we didn't get a chance to talk about your book, so I want to start with that and finish with that. And up on the Facebook page here, we have it, and tell us a little bit about that.
All right. The title of the book is The Road Scholar. Mm-hmm. And there is a Road Scholar, but this one is R-O-A-D.
Right.
The Road Scholar. It has 79 stories that happened to me on the road, traveling in Europe, traveling throughout the United States. So they're funny stories, they're exciting stories, and I hope that people would get it just for entertainment.
All right, and so we'll stop there and we'll finish up later.
Thank you.
And you just happened to roll into the church that I go to, and that's how we met. And then you started telling these stories, and the more I heard them, the more I laughed, and the more I laughed, the more I had to hear them. Now, the stories that we're telling, they're like previews of what's in the book, is that right?
They could be. The stories in the book are actually very short. No,
short is good. I just,
Yes.
correlating because I want them to get your voice and face with the book so they can have those two things. All right. So last time we talked about a bunch of stuff. The nun story is the one that stuck in my head the most. The second most was the one where you took off in the plane from the farmer's field. I really like that story.
Yes.
And then also when you drove across the bridge in the car and you weren't supposed to do that.
Exactly.
And the prince's palace and all that. That was a really good story. I like those stories. So we decided to have you back because we didn't have enough time for the rest of the stories.
That's true.
All right. So you had get me a list, and our mutual friend Mona had got me the list, and you said you want to start off the morning with Mr. Neff in regarding the flag because we got Veterans Day coming up.
Yes.
All right. So what's your story? First of all, who's Mr. Neff?
Okay, Bob Neff is the person who designed our current 50-star American flag.
Wow. How'd you meet him?
I've known him for most of our life.
Really?
He lived up in Saginaw, so I would drive up a couple of days a week. We'd go to have breakfast at Denny's, a place that he just loved. So, we would talk about all sorts of things in our life, and, of course, he talks about the American flag and how it started.
Right.
And so I've heard that story so many times, I can repeat it verbatim.
All right. So how did he get involved and how did that happen?
Okay, Bob was in high school. This was the last 5 weeks of the year.
Okay.
And his teacher, Mr. Pratt, said to the class, "Look, we've covered everything in the books, so I'm going to give you an opportunity the last 5 weeks to just come up with any sort of project you would like, and I will give you a grade on that."
Wow.
So people were picking up leaves and taping them to paper and telling what the tree it came from and that sort of thing. Bob took his parents' American flag and cut it apart and cut off all 48 stars.
Whoa.
And decided to reassemble this in 50 stars because he knew that soon 2 states would be added, Alaska and Hawaii.
Wow, and this was in what year?
This was in 1958.
So he decided just to do this?
To do this, yeah.
Well, how did that get from there to the flag? How did that happen?
Okay, that's exciting because he put he had his mother sew the stars back together, adding the 2 stars for the 2 new states.
Okay.
So he took it then and put it on Pratt's desk and turned it in to him. And Pratt came in that day and said, "Whose pile of mess is this?"
Right.
And so Bob raised his hand and said, and so Pratt said, "Well, what is it?"
Right.
He said, "It's the new 50-star American flag." Pratt said, "We only have 48 states." Bob said, "Yes, but 2 states are going to be added within the next year or so."
Right.
And they were. So Pratt said, "You know what? I'm going to give you a B- on this."
Wow.
Bob was furious.
Well, of course.
So and Pratt said, "If you get this accepted by the president, I'll consider raising your grade."
So it was a bet.
And it was just to consider raising your grade.
Right.
So Bob took the project home, and his congressman lived maybe a few blocks away.
Okay.
Bob took it over, finally found him home, presented it to him, and said, "Would you ask the president to accept this as the 50-star American flag?" The congressman said, "I'll do what I can."
Yeah.
So he did. He took the flag and presented it to the White House.
Yeah.
And he came back and he said, "You know, Bob, I don't know. They didn't seem too excited, but they've got it."
Yeah.
And so Bob said, "So what does that mean?" He said, "Well, the president will look at it, and if he likes it and he chooses it, he'll call you." Okay, so now 2 years passed.
Yeah.
It was the early part of 1960. Bob was working as an intern for some drafting company in his in that little town in Ohio. So he goes down to, the congressman called him early that morning and said, "Guess what? The president is going to call you today." So Bob goes down to the office and told the secretary, "Secretary, President Eisenhower is going to call me today. Would you come down and get me?" She said, "Oh, sure."
Yeah. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the day passed,
No
early
call.
afternoon, finally 2 o'clock came, and she ran down and said, "Bob, come with me quick. You got a phone call." So he ran back, and the office was jammed with workers from that little drafting company.
Yeah.
And so she said, "There's the phone. Pick up the phone and then push that button right there, and you'll have the president."
The president of the United States.
So Bob picked up the receiver, put it to his ear, pushed the button, and he said, "Hello, Mr. President." And the lady said, "No, hold on, sir. He'll be here in just a second." So seconds later, the lady said, "Mr. Heft, yes, the president will speak to you now." So the president said, "Mr. Heft, this is President Eisenhower." And he said, "I've decided to accept your design for the 50-star American flag, and I would like you to come to Washington, D.C. and be honored
Wow.
on the steps of the Capitol."
All because his teacher gave him a B-.
Yes. So Bob said, "Okay, but when did you want me to come?" So he said, "We want you here for the 4th of July, 1960. So that was just, a few weeks away.
Yeah.
So Bob said, "Well, let me ask my boss." Bob reaches over and hits the mute button.
He did not put the president on hold.
He put the president on hold.
That's so beautiful.
So the president of the company said, "What did you just do? Did you just hang up on the president of the United States?" He said, "No, I put him on hold." He said, "You can't put the president on hold." He said, "Yes, but he wants me to come out to Washington, D.C., and I didn't know if I have to work that day."
Nice.
The president said, "You can do anything that man wants you to do. Just say yes. Get him back on the phone."
Yeah.
So Bob pushed the unmute button. I don't know what you'd call it. And he said, "Dwight, my boss said I can come."
Dwight.
Now, who but a teenager would refer to the president as Dwight?
Right.
And
Oh, my goodness.
So then the president said, "Okay, you stay on the phone. My secretary is going to talk to you and tell you what to do
Yeah.
to get out here." So that happened.
That is how that story went down.
That's how that story went down.
Oh my goodness. That is just the first story. Now we're going to start the second story because you gave me a list of stuff we're going to get.
There's more to that story.
Oh, July 4th?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What happened?
Okay. So Bob had an old car. He drove out to Washington, D.C., pulled up to the gate of the White House. Of course, the guards stopped him, and they said, "What do you want?" He said, "Well, I'm here to see the president." They said, "Okay, what's your name?" So he gave him his name. They went over. They look at they've got a list of people that can see him that day, and they said, "Okay, Mr. Heff, pull your car right over there and leave the key in the ignition, and then you get out of the car and you walk up to the White House and somebody will meet you."
Wow.
Bob said, "Nope, no. My mother told me to not let anybody drive my car." They said, "Listen, it'll be okay.
Right.
We will take care of it.
Right.
It'll be." So they convinced him. So Bob pulled the car over, left the key, walked up to the White House, and so he stayed in the White House. Then that was like a day or so.
Yeah.
And
wait, he stayed at the White House for a whole day?
Yes.
Like he spent the night?
Because it was like the next day or something, they were going to have this ceremony on the steps of the Capitol.
Yeah.
So they were there, and when Bob got back to his hometown, there were no television trucks. It was just a reporter showed up at school.
Right.
And the reporter said, "What were you thinking when you were sitting on the steps beside the president?"
Yeah.
He said, "I couldn't wait to get back and put that letter on Pratt's desk that said it was accepted." So,
get that B- to an A, right?
yes, and he finally did get an A.
Oh, my goodness.
That's it, yes.
So don't always listen to teachers. They might not see talent. Is that what we're saying there?
True.
That's
true.
so funny. Oh, my gosh. And that happened in 1960. And you guys went to school together? That's how you knew each other?
No, we didn't, but we knew each other, and
I got
we
you.
both were interested in politics. And that
I got you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the next story you got, and I only got a minute before I get a break, so I kind of want to tease this just a pinch, is you titled this one Space Teacher.
Yes.
And you were a Flint school teacher for 5th grade. Is that correct?
That's true.
All right. And you decided to do what?
Okay. Our space program decided that they were going to have a teacher go into outer space.
Okay.
So I thought...
What year was this?
That was in the 80s.
Okay. Like 84, 85, 86.
Yes, maybe a year before that.
Okay.
So I've got on the website or something and requested an application.
Okay.
I didn't know it was so extensive, but it was very extensive. I had to have 5 community people write a letter of recommendation.
Okay.
I had to write a program that I would use to promote outer space to schools and to students, and that had to be approved. So there were a lot of things connected with that.
All right, hold on. We already got to go to a break. This is a perfect time to take a break because you just got the background in. If this is your first time to Spiritual Warfare Unit, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. Sit tight. We will be right back. Taking a quick break from our podcast, I wanted to let you know about our life application program that we have for churches and nonprofits in the area that are trying to find programming that they can use in case the corona shuts you down and you're not able to get in. You go to spiritualwarfareunit.com. You click on our episodes and you can check out our programs for as little as $29.99 a month to make sure that we're still getting the word out to those people that need it. Now, back to the program. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Isaac Walsh at UCAN Studios. This is The Warrior's Way with Spiritual Warfare Unit. I'm here with Dr. Bob Winford, and he was just telling us that he put his application in to be the teacher that went to space, and you had an extensive background check. You had to get 5 people from the community recommendation, and you had to have outline of how you would tell your story for space or have a program for schools for space.
That's true.
All right. So that's where we ended. What happened next?
So I got the application, and they go into extensive things on your education and where you teach and the grades you teach and the grades you have taught. And the promotional program had to be one that would really sell the teacher in space and the space program to students in schools. So that was the story, and I had my principal, of course, write a letter. I had a judge that I had done her campaign write a letter. I had state representatives, state senators, and a presidential candidate.
There you go.
To write the letters. So that's what I did, and sent them off, and just waited like everybody else.
Right. How long was the wait?
It was maybe a year or two.
Okay.
Because there were over 11,000 teachers in the United States that had applied to be the teacher in space.
11,000 people for one spot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's how it went. And then, of course, then the NASA from Houston put out a newsletter to these applicants, and they would keep us up to date on where they were and what they were doing and the excitement and that sort of thing. That was very good and very informative, because you learned so much about the space program that you just didn't know before.
Right.
I am so thrilled that I was not chosen, not because Krista McAuliffe, the teacher who was chosen, ended up losing her life in that event, but I'm a bit claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So right there, that should have ruled me out.
Well, why did you sign up for it in the first place? I mean, it's space.
Yes. But
you just thought it would be interesting.
I thought it would be great.
Of course you did.
Yes.
Of course you did. You have an adventurer spirit at your very core.
So it was going to be an exciting thing for me, and I knew I could do it. I knew that if I was chosen, I would be able to do that.
All right. Was there like a list of like what it got trailed down to, or who got what, or they just informed them at the end?
It didn't, not nearly like I thought it was going to. I thought they would say, now we have 500 that we've chosen, or we've had 200. It didn't come down to that. It just suddenly, these 2 or 3 people were named. And the reason is, if one of them, pooped out,
backup.
They had to have a backup for it.
Yeah, sure, because it's space and all.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So the next story that you wanted to get into was Harry Belafonte.
Okay.
So what is this in relative? What years are we talking about in your life here?
That would be maybe the mid-'60s.
Okay.
It could have been a bit earlier than that, but you haven't heard this story. Let me tell you.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Glenn Smith, he and I had been buddies forever. And we were in Evansville, Indiana, I believe.
Okay.
We were in a coffee shop, at a hotel coffee shop, and our street clothes of the day was a 2-piece suit, white shirt, necktie, shiny shoes. That's how we dressed.
Yeah, sharp.
So we were in this restaurant, and a couple came in with their little daughter.
Okay.
They were sitting at a table, a few feet away from us. And as we sat there, soon the man of that table got up and came over. And he said, "Are either of you ministers?" I said, yes.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you mind coming over to our table and saying grace over our breakfast?"
Okay.
I said, we'd be delighted to.
Okay.
So we got up and we walked over. I've got to tell you about Glenn Smith.
Okay.
If anybody knew how to pray poetically, Glenn Smith did.
Okay.
If anybody knew how to address God in an honorable way, Glenn Smith knew how to do that.
Okay.
So we got up and we walked over, and the little girl was maybe 2, I don't know, 2 years of age.
Okay.
And the beautiful wife sitting there. And so this was Harry Belafonte. I didn't know it at the moment.
It was Harry Belafonte that asked you to do that?
Harry Belafonte had asked us to come over and pray over their
In
breakfast.
Evansville, Indiana?
Yes.
What in the world?
So I looked, and his wife had her head bowed in prayer. This little baby girl, that it was so touching because she had her hands kind of together like she had been taught by Mom and Dad, that it was prayer time, and Harry bowed his head.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to ask my friend Glenn Smith to pray.
Yeah.
And he started praying. Oh, it was just unbelievable.
Really?
You knew that if anybody knew how to touch God, Glenn did.
Wow.
He finished the prayer, and we went back to our table and sat down, and a man walked up to us. He said, wow, how long have you known Harry Belafonte? It was at that second that I knew who we had been with.
Oh, my God. And what were you doing in Evansville? Like, what were you doing there?
Okay.
What are the chances?
Yes, that is true. We were there because I had been put in charge of a small church in Carmi, Illinois.
Okay.
I was to minister there until they could get a full-time pastor. And so Glenn was there with me, and we had gone to Evansville because we were looking for seats for this new church.
Wow.
And there we knew that theaters in Indiana were, some of them were closing, and we would buy some theater seats. They would be upholstered. They would be nice.
Yeah.
So that's why we were there.
Wow. And you just happened to walk in, and that guy just happened to come. Like, did people ask you to pray for them a lot in the 60s?
No.
Like, that seems odd.
We have never had that kind of an experience ever in our life. Yeah. And certainly not from a well-known personality like Harry Belafonte.
Wow, and so again, I don't know what to say to that. Like, it's just it's craziness. It's crazy. This is why I have you on, because this is impressive. All right, so we got to the Neff story, which was funny, the space teacher story, the Harry Belafonte story. Now the next one that you wanted to do was Dr. Armand Nicolai.
Yes.
All right, what years would this be?
This would be 1964.
Okay, so same time frame.
When I was 17 years of age, I was playing bass fiddle with the Gospelaires.
Okay.
They were a popular singing group, and I've got stories that you would love about that, but I played bass with them, and on my off times, I would go to small towns in the very deep South. I would rent a Billy Graham film, and I would show it in the high school.
Okay.
The high school would loan me their projector, would loan me the use of their auditorium, and I would put posters out on trees and lampposts around, and it was free.
Right.
And our crowds would be enormous. I was surprised at how many people would attend the showing of these films. So I would do that. So that's how I got connected with Billy Graham.
Right.
Now to the story of Dr. Armand Nicolai. I was at a convention, and above the stage was one of these devices that it would say, Mrs. Jenkins, please go to the nursery.
Right.
Right. And they would send messages to people, Yeah. So I was standing out in the lobby with Kenneth Copeland. I don't know if you know who that is.
I do.
But in the lobby with Kenneth Copeland and a few other evangelists. And it came across that screen, Bob Winford called Billy Graham, and it gave a phone number.
Were you looking to get a call from him?
No.
Oh.
No. But we had communicated, in one way. So a young man came running in the lobby and says, where's Bob Winford? And so he found me. He said, I just wrote this number down. It said, Bob Winford, call Billy Graham at this number here. Give it to me. Kenneth Copeland said, we're going to pray right now for Bob. So they prayed that whatever happened, I wouldn't leave this organization for his.
Gotcha.
So I went.
Okay.
The reason I wanted to talk to Billy Graham is I had been told a very sad story about a couple of evangelists and some problems they were having emotionally and spiritually.
Right.
And I needed help. So I went up there and I told Billy, I said, I really need help for this couple that's in the ministry. He said, it sounds like that she needs a counselor. He said, when I get back to my office, I'll get his number. So he called me back a couple days later, and he said, I want you to call Dr. Armin Nikolai. He said he is the head psychiatrist at Harvard University in Boston. He said, I'm going to give you two numbers. One is his office number. The other is his number at home. That was long before cell phones.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. But he said, Bob, before you call, give me 10 minutes. I want to call Armin and set him up for this.
Yeah.
So I gave him 10 minutes. I'm standing in a phone booth outside of a bus station in Muskegon, Michigan.
Yeah.
And so I called Graham back in 10 minutes, and he said, he's ready for your call. So I called him. He said, call him at his office. He said, that's where I just talked with him. So I called him, and he said, if you can get a hold of the couple and have them come to Boston, I will meet with them, but they need to come today. So I called them. They said, yes, we can leave now.
From Muskegon, Michigan to Boston.
Yes.
Wow.
So now, they were not in Muskegon. They were in Ohio somewhere, but I got a hold of them, and they went then to Boston and met with Dr. Armin Nikolai, and he arranged counseling sessions for these people all over the country.
No kidding.
So that was amazing, and it changed their life. It revolutionized their life, and they were able then to continue in the ministry.
No kidding. And he just called this guy like I'm calling my local doctor.
Yes.
Man.
Yes.
That's extraordinary. Did you let Kenneth Copeland know so you knew he wasn't leaving his ministry or what?
I did, but there's more stories about him.
All right. Well, before we go, we got to go to our second break. If this is your first time, please like, share, and subscribe on Spiritual Warfare Unit. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Aaron with UCAN. We're out here at our third annual golf outing here in the Genesee Valley Meadows. So, really good day. We have a great number of teams, great sponsorship, great people. We're hoping for a great time. The weather's good. So, we appreciate all the support we get at all of our events. It helps us fight the fight that we fight. So, thank you all. Stay the course.
A lot of fun with a good cause. This is a very good cause, and I enjoy doing it. And I have my sons with me today, and we're just going to have fun. We know we're not going to win, but we're going to have fun.
Oh, today is an awesome day today. This is our fourth or fifth one here, and can't thank UCAN enough for what they do, especially on this situation where they have this outing. Mark and Debbie and all of them. It's just an amazing outing, and I couldn't think of it brings back memories, but it's a wonderful thing, and we really appreciate it.
Welcome back to UCAN Studios. I am your host, Isaac Walsh, and I'm here with Dr. Bob Winford, and we were just telling stories of his life and things that had happened. And some of these stories are in his book, The Road Scholar, which we'll get to here at the end. And you were just telling us about how you'd met Harry Belafonte by chance in Evansville, Indiana, which is nuts. because if you didn't see the first one, you also had a literal run-in with the president. I won't blow that story.
Okay.
But if they want to check that one out, that was a super great story. And then the Billy Graham one. And the next one you had on your list to make sure to hit was Dr. Martin Luther King. You had some work with him.
Yes, I did.
All right. How did you originally meet? Is this how you originally met? Or is this afterwards?
No, I met him, prior to this story, of course, and he is, as you know, a brilliant speaker.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
So I met him through Jim Phillips, a friend who recently passed away in Texas. But let me get to the story.
Yes, of course.
I have a friend who lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area.
Mm-hmm.
Her first name is Diane.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes refer to her as my Princess Diane.
Oh, very good.
Because of her influence on so many different things.
Okay.
So I had notified her that I would be flying through Atlanta in a day or so.
Mm-hmm.
She said, tell me when you're going to land and when you have to leave. So I always tried to make it that I had a day that I could spend in Atlanta.
Right.
So I told her, and she picked me up at the airport. And she said, tonight we're going to the Fox Theater.
Okay.
I said, oh, fabulous.
Right.
That'll be fabulous.
Yeah.
I had heard about it, but I didn't know really how beautiful this place was.
Okay.
So I don't even know who was performing at the Fox.
Didn't matter.
So I got there. So she picked me up, and later that evening we arrived at the Fox, and we're standing in the lobby. And Diane said, I'm going to the powder room. I'll be right back. So
Okay.
she disappeared. This lady police officer, I don't know if she was like a sheriff, deputy sheriff or state police. I didn't know, but I just knew that she was some police officer.
Mm-hmm.
She walked up to me and she said, so who are you? And I said, I'm Bob Winford. And she said, I know you're going to enjoy the show tonight. You'll really enjoy that. And she said, where did your lady friend go? I said, she went to the powder room or something.
Mm-hmm.
About that time, Diane showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And she walked up to us, and the police officer said, kind of to both of us, where are your seats? Then she answered the question herself, the police officer did. She said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Follow me. So we followed her down the carpeted, all the way down to the front row of the theater.
What?
And yes, and so the officer said, now follow me again. So now she's going across the theater to the very middle. And she said...
Middle front row.
Middle front row. She said, these are your two seats.
Was she looking for you? I don't understand.
I don't know. You tell me. That's why I came here. I thought you'd know. But at any rate, Diane and I are looking at each other.
Yeah.
And she said, you sit here. And Diane sat down, and you sat here. And she said, when the show is over, don't get up. I'll come back and get you.
Okay.
And so the entertainer, it was really like, I can't think of a person, but it was a black man. The show was fabulous. We enjoyed it. We're sitting right there, and the entertainer would look at us,
Wow.
like he was talking just to us for a second.
Yeah.
And so the show was over. So we sat there,
Okay.
and the police officer arrived and said, come with me. So we followed her back up, and she said, where did you park? And Diane knew, what lot and so forth. But it was like a building that we parked in, one of those things.
Yeah.
So she said, I know where it is. So we followed her out, dark, all the way to the car.
Yeah.
She stayed there until we got in and started the motor. I couldn't believe it. It was just amazing.
And they didn't mix you up with somebody.
No.
She just said, "Oh, what's your name? I'm putting you in the front row."
Yes, and we didn't know she was going to put us in the front row. She just said, "Follow me." So now the next day,
Okay.
Diane said, "Would you like to go to Daddy King's church?"
And I had to ask you because I don't know if everybody knows this, but I asked you what that meant. And you told me.
Okay, Daddy King is Martin Luther King's father.
And where was his church at?
And in Atlanta.
Okay.
And so I said, Diane, absolutely. It almost brought tears to my eyes because I love the King family so much. So we got to the church, and it was late afternoon, maybe 3 o'clock or so.
Okay.
We got there, we parked, and we went into the church. And when we got in the church, there was like an usher or something that took us, said, "Follow me." So we followed him up, and he put us on the second row. Mm-hmm. And we could sit, and they weren't divided seats. It was just a long bench.
Right.
So we sat down there, and they present a program, and they tell you what happened, this and that, and so forth, and which was very interesting and very exciting to me.
Yeah.
So at the end of the program, she said, "I want to tell the audience this." She said, "The people sitting on the second row were all arrested during that outbreak in Birmingham.
Wow.
They had all been arrested."
No kidding.
And so we left there, and we got out, and by now it was nearly 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Let's go down and look at King's childhood home."
Okay.
So they had a tour that they would take you on.
Yeah.
So we're going that direction, and she said, "Oh my goodness." She said, "The guy, I'm sure that he's in charge of this, is locking up the door where it says, King Tours."
Yeah.
So Diane broke and ran down as only Diane can do.
Okay.
She said, "Are we too late for a tour?" He said, "Yes, the tours are over for today of the home." She said, "I have Dr. Bob Winford with me. He was with Dr. King when he got the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway."
No kidding.
He said, "Oh my goodness, you're kidding." He said, "I'll take you on the tour myself."
Wow.
So we followed him, went down to the home. The home it was huge.
Okay.
It looked like a 3-story house.
Wow.
Beautiful. So we go in, and of course there's notices, no photographs to be taken, so forth.
Right.
I didn't violate that at all. We just listened to this man, and this was a tour like you will never believe. We heard, when we got to the dining room, which to me was the most impressive place, he said the King family would sit here, and when they had dinner, they wore Sunday go-to-meeting clothes. They were dressed up. Each person, each child was given an assignment.
Okay.
Like Amos chapter 1 through 6 or whatever, that they were to know the next day.
To memorize.
Yes.
Wow.
And it wouldn't be like 6 chapters, but it would be a section.
Yeah, like 6 verses or something.
That they were to memorize. And then they were also to answer questions about it. What does that mean? What do you think that person did? And it was just to know that the family was raised on the Word of God.
Right.
Was just so impressive to me.
Yeah.
And we left there with a world of knowledge about the King family. And now this was Daddy King.
Yeah.
It was his family.
Yeah. All right, so I have a couple questions about that story.
Yes.
So how did you get invited to his Nobel Peace thing in Norway? Like, how did that happen? Because you just mentioned it.
I don't know. Because his whole team, the people that had worked with him were all there.
Okay. Oh, and you guys worked together, so you just knew each
And
other.
So Jesse Jackson,
Yeah.
this is radio and not television, but his afro was this big.
Really?
Yes,
And this is mid-'60s?
it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
All right. So you had, see, that must have been extraordinary to see, just to be a part of,
it
and
was.
so many intelligent people. I mean,
Let me tell you, as I walked the downtown area of Oslo, these Norwegians had the greatest respect for Dr. King.
wow.
You not only sensed it, it was like emitted from
You could
their,
feel it.
Yes,
Wow.
that's true. And that was so much unlike it was in this country. Because Dr. King had spoken at International Platform Association. I was a member of that. And he was the keynote speaker to this event. And I listened to his hour-and-a-half long speech. Oh, this man knew words.
Yeah.
And then when I got to my hotel room that night, I knew it was going to be on television. I turned it on. I was so disappointed
Really?
because the reporter was saying things that King did not say.
No
He was
kidding.
emphasizing things that King did not emphasize.
No kidding.
And it was just very disappointing.
Well, with that, we got to go to our next break. If this is your first time, please like, share, and subscribe so we can help get the word out. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
I'm really impressed with the teachings that Isaac has been bringing to us, as this is all based from Proverbs.
I like it because it's simple, and it doesn't matter who you are. It's very easy to understand and apply to your life.
You know, it points out, my bad parts, and, but it's showing me how to do the good parts. And, I'm trying to apply that and, make a better life for myself because I'm tired of where I've been.
It's impacted a lot of the guys as they continue to talk and ask questions after the meetings, as they speak to one another regarding the meeting and the messages and the topics that are being brought up, which are down-to-earth topics of situations and things that we live with on a day-to-day basis.
He takes the Bible and he breaks it down into simple terms and where you can understand. And like I said before, sometimes a lot of churches, even the Salvation Army, sometimes we start using these big words that people don't understand, like even saying someone got saved. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean when you say someone got saved? And it's accepting Jesus into your heart. So it's like words like that we use that people don't understand.
It's just very interesting how he points out, the different things of, the sin part, and then he comes back with the, how to make it better, and he just points it out. It's there. I didn't know all this stuff was in there, but now that he's pointing it out, it's like, wow, I guess if you really dig into the Bible, you find these things.
This is a daily moral standards that we can live by, that the teachings are coming from. And honestly, we can take verse by verse as what he's done, and pretty much he's done the hard work for us and now laying it out so that we have an easier understanding.
There's some people who don't like to be in Bible classes, but this one seems to get their attention.
Welcome back to UCAN Studios. I am your host, Isaac Walsh, and I'm here with Dr. Bob Winford, and he was just regaling us some of the stories of his life and the people and situation that he's ran into, and it seems like every single major event that was going on in the 60s, you were right in the middle of those things, and you just finished up a story about Martin Luther King and visiting his family house and visiting his dad's church. If there's any information that you think about Martin Luther King that is off the beaten path that people don't know about him that you'd want them to know, is there anything?
Let me say this, and maybe this sets with your audience, but Dr. King was a man of God.
Mm-hmm.
And his the speeches he gave, being in the Birmingham jail,
Mm-hmm.
I got a copy of that speech, and it's just a man that loved God and loved people.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any story about Jesus in the New Testament, it's a story of love.
Mm.
And Dr. King was the epitome of that.
Of loving people.
Yes.
Man, that's a great sentiment. Thank you for finishing up, because I know we had to cut a little short for the break. All right. So we kind of made a makeshift list, and I want to get to his book and a thing, but we have one more thing here. It says clips. Do you remember what we were talking about? It was right after going to see Daddy King's store, and then you told me to write down clips. I don't remember what that meant.
Oh, Clips. Well, yes. Paul Clips, K-L-I-P.
Paul Clips.
S-C-H, Clips.
Okay.
Is the inventor of the Clips horn.
Now, what is that?
That's a huge. It looks like a speaker for an organ. It's huge. It's
Okay.
2 or 3 feet wide, 4 feet, 5 feet tall.
A 3 foot by 5 foot speaker?
This is a speaker. Yes.
Wow.
And it looks like an organ. A speaker for an organ.
Yeah.
Paul Clips. His hometown was Hope, Arkansas.
Hope.
And
okay.
you will remember Hope, Arkansas, because Billy Clinton,
Right.
Mentioned that a lot.
Yeah.
So I was speaking at rallies at Hope, Arkansas.
All right. What years was this?
Oh, this was in the very, very late 50s.
Okay.
So, so one day I passed by the Clips Horn factory where they make them.
Okay.
So I stopped there, and I met him. I met Paul, and
Okay.
he was like, we've been friends forever. I mean, he was just a brilliant.
You didn't know the man, and you just started.
I did not know him. I just stopped and met him, and and as we were talking, I said I had questions about his speaker.
Okay.
One question was, the speaker is made out of 3/4 inch plywood.
Okay.
This is a little technical, but I said, how do you know that there are no fragments of wood in some little pocket in that speaker that rattle and
Yeah.
distort your sound?
Wow.
He said, that's because we order special. the plywood that we order has to have been put through test that does not have that kind of thing. I thought, wow.
Wait a minute. They make particle board plywood that's different for sound than it is for regular plywood?
Yes. Yes.
What? How do they? Do you know how? I didn't know that.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So they have to make it one layer at a time,
No kidding.
so that there are no pockets, that could have a little chunk of wood
Right.
would rattle in there.
Yeah.
So he talked about that. Now, the Clips horn is this big speaker.
Okay.
He uses, surprisingly, Electro-Voice speakers. And Electro-Voice makes a 15 and 18-inch speaker.
Wow.
So he uses those in certain units. But what would be interesting to you would be to, first of all, do some research on Paul Clips
Okay.
and find. I bought his headsets.
Okay.
Oh, they are.
Oh, you're talking about sound.
Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
they
Okay.
are magnificent.
Really?
But now they have since moved from Hope, Arkansas to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay.
All of my contacts with them have been there. Of course, Paul died some time ago.
Okay. But his company and his stuff is still
Company
there.
and relatives or something,
Yeah.
continue with that.
And I know why we were doing that story, because we were having problems with the headset this morning. You're like, oh, I know a guy that had a headset company. I'm like, of course you know a guy that has. That's why we wrote that down.
Yes.
All right. Well, is there anything that's coming to your brain that you wanted to talk about other than your book? Like anything else that you're like, oh, I forgot this one, or I like this story real quick?
Not really.
All right, perfect. So this book up there on the screen, The Road Scholar. Now, what year did you write this?
let me tell you, I have been writing it for a long, long time.
Oh, I see. It's just a collection of stories that you put together.
Because they were stories. Now, when I told the producer, he said, "How many stories do you have?" I said, "Well, I have about 300." He said, "Oh no, that's way too many." stories."
Yeah.
And so he said, "You want to reduce it to, much, much smaller than that."
Yeah.
So I ended up picking these 79 stories, and I think there were more than that. And he said, "We're not going to put this one, this one, this one, this one."
Well, it allows you to get more volumes of books, right?
Yes.
Volume 1, Volume 2.
I guess that was his point.
Oh, very good. All right. So what year did you get this published? Is it this year?
Probably 10 years ago.
Okay. And what's the purpose for the book? What was the reason?
It's just that various places that I would go and I would tell stories, people would say, "You've got to have a book." And that was always the thing. You've got to have a book.
Oh, I gotcha. So it's like it's a storybook, a coffee table book that you can put on there about stories.
Yes.
And let me tell you like that story you just walking into the president at a coffee shop. Like how does that happen to people?
I know.
Like that was ridiculous. You're like, "Oh, sorry, Mr. Eisenhower." So anyways,
without them getting shot,
Right, without getting shot. So out of the 79 stories that you had in there, like what's your favorite one?
My favorite one is one that I told you about Maud.
Okay.
That was the very heavy lady that we baptized.
Yeah. No, don't tell anybody because that goes to the first video. If you haven't checked that out, it's about halfway through. I have told that story 10 times.
Okay.
Since you told them that story, and they laughed every single time because the way you finished that was like, oh, they're like, "Hey, man." I was laughing so hard. I'm not going to blow your thunder. That's your story to tell, and I'll miss details. But if you haven't seen that, you got to hit the previous video with Bob.
Yes.
That was great. And the stories that you have in there, now 79 of those stories, you said you have some really short ones, right? Like
Yes.
super short ones.
Yeah, there are very short stories. I don't know if I can tell this one.
You don't know if you can tell it?
I don't know. I'm going to tell it. Here's
Okay.
what. We were in Vienna, Austria,
Okay.
and we wanted to walk from Vienna, Austria to this palace that was very famous. And it was a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
So we got out of the train station and we're walking down the sidewalk, and up our distance, a block and a half down the road, was a man with a big dog.
Okay.
And so I said to my wife, "Dear, let's cross the street."
Yeah, big
She was on
dog.
the same side with us. So we crossed the street.
Okay.
Seconds later, they crossed the street.
Uh-oh.
And so I looked at my wife and I said, what do you think?
What do you think?
She said, "Let's cross the street." So we went back across the street.
Okay.
Same thing happened.
Cross back.
Yes, the dog and the man are now in front of us.
Yeah.
And they're a half a block away.
And they clearly did that on purpose.
I was absolutely certain that they did that on purpose.
Right.
So then we went back across the street. They did that. And my wife said, "We've got to have a plan."
A plan. Okay.
I said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do." I said, if this dog lunges at us,
Yeah.
here's what. I will jam my fist down his throat,
Into his mouth. Okay.
and you grab him by the you-know-whats.
Gotcha.
I said, "Okay." She said, "Yes."
All right, we got a
Got it.
plan.
She said, "Okay, that's what we're going to do."
Okay.
And she said, "Wow." She said, "You're going to drive your fist down his throat?"
Yeah, into his mouth.
and I'm going to grab him.
Right.
She said, what do we do about the dog?
Oh my gosh, I did not see that one coming. Bob, well played. Oh, that's funny. So there's all kinds of stuff in there like that.
So if you can't keep that story, just...
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. We're definitely showing that story.
Oh, really?
Oh, well done. Boy, you sucked me right into that one. That slow play was ridiculous. Oh my gosh, so 79 stories of just things that have happened in your life.
Yes.
And if people wanted to get it, where could they go?
They could go to Amazon and just type in, Bob Winford.
Okay, or they could type in Road Scholar.
They could do that, yes.
Yeah, ROAD, Road Scholar.
Yes. And here's something that I didn't know until I wrote the book, and that is titles to books are not protected by copyright.
What?
No, because I requested a copy of the Road Scholar,
Yeah.
and it kind of came up like, which one?
Which one?
There were like 10 or 12
No kidding.
different books you could buy that were the Road Scholar.
No kidding. So you need the one of you on the cover with Stonehenge.
That's me on the cover,
Yeah.
and Eiffel Tower.
And what's the thing on the right with all the different road signs? I don't know what that is.
Oh, if that has different, does it have different cities on it?
Yep. How many miles away? Yeah.
Yes.
Like MASH.
Okay, I told the guy that put this all together about that.
Okay.
But that's another story. And in Japan, there was one of these, a post that had, Chicago this far.
Oh, yeah.
Denver
Was it
this
on a
far.
military base?
I don't know,
Oh,
because
okay.
I didn't see that one. And so,
okay.
and so one of them said, Chillicothe Business College.
No kidding.
No, yes, and that's Chillicothe, Missouri.
Yeah.
And that's a story that you heard about where Oral Roberts and I spoke at this place, and
Oh, yeah.
Brooklyn flew in. That's it.
Yeah, and he got stuck and he couldn't get to his own thing, so I had to ride a helicopter. That one also is on the previous show, and I will not steal the thunder of that as well.
Yes.
Well, buddy, again, Bob, great to see you. I love these stories. I'm going to keep having you on to tell stories until you get sick of doing it, because you really wrote me in on that last one. That was well done with you and your wife. That was very good. So you can go to Amazon and check it out and get the Road Scholar. It's Dr. Bob Winford. What a great, great life that you've had. And you said you have over 300 of these stories, and you
Yes.
only printed 79 of them.
Yes.
Man, well, I would like to get a bunch of those. I don't know if we'll get all of those, but I want to get a bunch of them. And I just want to thank you for coming in. And if this is your first time in, this is your last chance. Please like, share, and subscribe, and join our stories of people that live their faith every day. I want to thank you so much for coming in to Spiritual Warfare Unit. And if you know anyone that's struggling with drug rehabilitation or alcohol, please have them go to UCAN, UCANMichigan.com. Click on struggling, or if they're struggling with life in general, please go to spiritualwarfareunit.com, click on struggling, and get some of our friends out there. We will see you next time. Prophet in your area that's doing a lot of work that people should know about, feel free to contact Spiritual Warfare Unit at 810-715-9319, and we would love to have them on to see what good they're doing in the community and find out their story. Thank you so much.
Spent so much time believing the lies. I knew I wasn't meant to live this way. But my walls came down when your love shone through. Now my life will never be the same. You love me too much to let me stay this way.